it's like this paradox of, in order to fully emerge as our unique self, we need to be willing to surrender to the whole. And that willingness to surrender is kind of like almost giving up my power to receive a power that is so much deeper. And then in receiving that deeper power, actually a whole new level of our unique self emerges. And so in my journey, I really had to let go of the things I thought my unique self would be, and being kind of stripped from all of that and just say, okay, I'm just going to do whatever is needed. And then in that, my unique self emerged so much more powerful than ever before.
So we're in St. Johnsbury. So this is a special day, and we're actually going to ask the question, why are we here? And I'm going to start with the intention setting, and then we'll have a code, as Christina mentioned, and then we're going to have a little dialogue, conversation about each of our perspectives and what we're learning here, what kind of gems we're able to take from it. And so you'll get a little bit of a taste into this revolution, right? And the center of where it's all happening. And so let me start with the intention. So why are we here in One Mountain? All right. Why did we come to St. Johnsbury this week? Why did people from Europe fly here, spending weeks at a time in this little town, St. Johnsbury? Why did Christina, Marc's partner, paint this house white and treat this as a temple space? Why is it that at 9 a.m. every morning we've been chanting and waking up the neighbors and making their dogs a little crazy in the tent outside? So there's something important here, right? Why did you come to One Mountain? What actually has drawn you here? We're actually living it. What I'm about to share, the intention setting, is actually available to each of us because we can feel it in ourselves, right? So we have a crisis of meaning, crisis of value, crisis of intimacy, as Dr. Marc Gafni, our teacher, often starts this One Mountain broadcast with this intention setting. So I'm going to try my best to articulate it in the way that I've been learning from Dr. Marc, and maybe kind of providing a little bit of my unique take on it. So look around and we see less and less clarity on what meaning there is to gather from this world. Is value real? What is real? Is it just, my story and your story, and we kind of do our own things and then kind of go our separate ways? Or is there something intrinsically valuable about our experience that we actually share, and that's worth protecting, cultivating, developing, growing, deepening, right? And since this is an evolutionary community, this is an evolutionary worldview. In fact, this One Mountain used to be called Evolutionary Church. When we have a question like this, we always want to trace it back to the evolutionary process, the evolutionary arc of how we got to where we are today. And one of the ways we often do that is we look at pre-modernity, which is, several thousand years, since the beginning of Homo sapiens until several thousand years ago, and look at what was there that perhaps we've lost, we can recover. And then we look at modernity, a different time period in the evolution of our species, and several hundred years. And then we look at post-modernity, and we see what is the process that has been happening to lead us to where we are today. And so first we look at, the pre-modern times, where was meaning? Where was value? Where was ultimate truth? And we look at the deep wisdom traditions, right? Christianity, Judaism, Islam, right? Hinduism, right? Taoism, all the different ancient wisdom traditions, and they actually disclose reality being intrinsically meaningful, right? Now, there was actually a meaningful cosmos. Now, they all had different paths to it, right? But everything, there was this cosmos was drenched in meaning. And so our purpose, in a certain sense, with all the different traditions, was to move along a path to actually become in alignment with that ultimate truth, right? Whether it was aligning with the Tao, or it was connecting with God and loving God, or whether it was awakening to our true self, or the oneness of reality. In any case, the commonality was that there is something ultimately meaningful. There is something valuable. Now, the downsides, the disasters, as we call it, there's the dignities and disasters of each of these eras in human history. The disasters were that the pre-modern traditions were often very ethnocentric. They were very small. They actually didn't have a sense of global civilization. They didn't have a sense that there's multiple ways to go about this. There's multiple paths up the mountain. There was this one mountain, and it was our mountain, right? So there may be, for example, St. Augustine said there's only redemption through the church, right? And also those traditions oftentimes degraded or somehow dissociated from aspects of the human experience, right? So St. Teresa, a saint that I've been studying before, and she talked about, I'm just a worm. God, I'm here before you. I'm nothing. I'm just a worm, right? And so there was a sense of, well, we're just lowly humans, and then the ultimate is something that's beyond us that we can't actually ultimately become, right? Or even, Ramana Maharshi from the Hindu tradition said that which is not present in deep, dreamless sleep is not real. So all of this that we see and touch and feel and hear, it's all an illusion, right? Even the pagan traditions thought that a lot of things, that there was sacredness all around us, but oftentimes they were local. They were too small. They actually stopped at this river or this mountain, and actually, while everything was drenched in, and the body was drenched in meaning and purpose and feeling, and there was so much depth there, there was a limitation in, how expanded it could get a lot of times. So the modern era, humans actually emerged in the modern era and in a certain sense rebelled against those traditions and said, wait a minute. All these local traditions, there's actually universals. There's universal principles to reality that, in the Declaration of Independence, we take these truths to be self-evident. So there's sort of truths and there's principles that we can understand and optimize. And actually all the power is back in our hands as humans. So in the modern era, instead of this ultimate reality be something that we had to kind of become closer to or align with, we actually realize that we are in a certain sense, our own gods. We have all the power, so we can achieve, we can optimize our experience, we can, just sort of, discover all the laws, science, mathematics, right? The ability to make all these distinctions and categorizations and to measure the world and actually kind of have dominion over it in a certain sense. So out of that, the dignities were that universal human rights was one of those principles, right? There's this sense that all men are created equal, women and everyone else, right? Democracy and different rules of law that actually put the hands of power into the people and not just some kind of special elite, right? But even that came to, the disasters of modernity. There were some shadows that post-modernity pushed against, right? And kind of in the 60s was the big sort of example of that coming out. How do you know there's some universal laws? Who says there are universal laws? There's these principles. Most of the time it's the principles that the people in power have decided that the principles that benefit them. So wait a minute, what about all the people that are left out of these systems that were created? In reality, the postmodern realization was, wait a minute, there's perspectives, there's multiple perspectives, and we want to include all the perspectives that were removed or taken out or rejected or marginalized. So actual marginalized groups being some of them, but also the body, right? The biosphere, being able to incorporate these different perspectives was really the dignity of postmodernity, right? So the 60s was just an explosion of creativity and inclusion, right? And, a different kind of cross-pollination of spiritual traditions and practices, right? Also, this realization that we all kind of individually have a past that actually shapes us. So we could go back into our childhood wounds and recover our stories and actually find some of our personal story that makes more sense, right? So story was a big contribution of the postmodern mind. And then the technology that came out of it, the World Wide Web, allowed all these perspectives to be known instantly, right? We can connect with people all over the world and perspective and knowledge, right? So everything opened up, right? That's the beauty of postmodernity. Value was kind of like, I made up my own value. I created my own story. I have no authority to tell you what you should do or how you should be, what is good, what is better of a life. It's your personal story, right? So the downsides, the disasters, is that if everyone can kind of make up their own story, then nothing ultimately matters. There's no shared story. There's no shared map of ultimate meaning. There's no global coherence. There's no global resonance. There's nothing that we ultimately share. And so the World Wide Web became and has become a place of, actually an explosion of teen suicide and addiction, right? And depression, right? People, there's a whole generation of kids who've grown up with an iPad in their hands that have no sense of what's good. And all they have a sense of is their automatic dopamine hits from all the little games and apps and their Facebook likes that they're exposed to. So the postmodern worldview has come to a place where the disasters are actually catastrophic and even existential, because it's so much information. Facebook and it all organizes people's ideas, but also organizes potentially terrorism and fake news and overturning distorting election results and perspectives on people, right? So it can distort our reality so that we don't know what's good, what's true, what's real anymore, right? And now we have AI, artificial intelligence, which is a big topic of conversation this weekend, that is a new technology unlike any other transformation of technology that we've ever experienced. It's exponentially faster, it's exponentially more powerful, and it's exponentially less understood than any other technology that we've ever built. So what happens? There's a ground of value that we don't know anymore as a culture. So there's polarization. So people just say, oh, this is my value and this is, and it's the correct one. And so your value is wrong. And then there's polarization, right? We actually can't coordinate on a global scale to solve our global problems like climate change, for example. So here we are facing existential threats to humanity, the meta crisis from all different sides, and we don't know what is good and what is real and what is valuable. And so it very, very much is possible that we could lose this whole thing. Now, the good news is that we live in an intimate cosmos. We live in an evolutionary cosmos. And so as I'm speaking, as you're listening, as your heart is throbbing, as each of us are convening together, we're actually participating in this thrust of evolution. And so today is a new moment to contribute our gifts to weaving a new story, right? Weaving value, re-sacredizing, if that's a word, sacralizing, maybe that's the real word, the cosmos, the world, so that we can actually teach our children that there is something that's good to be, and there is truth out there, and there is some ultimate goodness that we can aspire to, and that we all can share in an evolutionary story that binds us, that catalyzes global action, that opens up global intimacy and global love, right? So One Mountain, Many Paths is here to be one of those efforts, initiatives. This is 403rd week that we've done this, to communicate the new story, right? And Dr. Marc Gafni is usually here to communicate the story. And so we're here to articulate how we're experiencing it, and the Dharma, the teachings, the principles, the first principles that are powerful this weekend. Okay. So I'm going to read a code now, and the code is representative of a lot of what I just shared, but it's more crystalline, and it's Marc's words, actually. And the codes, if you're new here, the evolutionary love codes are written by Dr. Marc Gafni, our teacher. And again, they frame our conversation. And this is really what we're doing here, right? So we live in a time between stories. We live in a time between worlds. We live in a time where we hold the power of ancient gods. We have the power to create worlds of unimaginable goodness, truth, and beauty, and we have the power to end worlds, to end humanity, or to end our humanity. We have no story equal to our power. And this is what we call in CosmoErotic Humanism the second shock of existence. We are here to tell a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values. This new story is a story in which the cosmic story and the personal story are one. This is a new story of our power, a new universe story, a new story of our identity, a new story of desire, and a new story of communion. It is only the articulation of a new story of value that has the capacity to respond to the meta-crisis. But it's even more. The telling of a new story is the inherent natural movement of cosmos itself. The evolution of story is the evolution of culture and consciousness, which is the evolution of love, which is the evolution of the manifest God. So I know that's a lot, but we're going to unpack some of it because in just a moment, we're going to have our beloved Krista and Christina join us for a dialogue about what we're gaining from this retreat. All right. Here we are up in the World Philosophy and Center for World Philosophy and Religion headquarters in St. Johnsbury in one of the suites upstairs. And I'm back here with Krista and Christina. And I'm just going to ask a few questions and we'll have a little conversation about what it's like to be here. So first of all, in the code, as we just read, it talks about our personal story actually being part of the cosmic story, right? And that's what really integrates the pre-modern and the postmodern worldviews is that we actually participate in this cosmos. And so actually reweaving and telling a story of our own sacred autobiography really matters. So the first question I want to ask Krista here, hi Krista, is how does coming here to St. Johnsbury relate to your own sacred autobiography?
That is a great question. Thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you for setting the intention so beautifully. And I just want to say I really enjoyed how you did that and how clear it was. And to see us as students of the Dharma emerge so powerfully at how the Dharma comes through us uniquely and how clear it is. So thank you for modeling that for us. And I thought actually you were going to ask the other question first.
Oh,
but
okay.
Anyway, I'll just go there anyway, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the things about us being here together is really feeling the quality of being in person and the resonant field that is happening in the spaces between us. And as we're speaking about the field of value, we're literally kind of drenching our souls and our body in this field of value and experiencing and feeling that it is real. It is really, really real. And at the same time, we're also talking, of course, at the board meeting about existential risk. And that was the piece in your code that struck me, is that we actually have the power to destroy the entire planet and the entire humanity. And so I think being here, I kind of feel trembling in both the joy of being together, but also the shock of what we're facing and the world that we are in and the potential dystopia that can manifest. And actually last night I had a very intense dream, which was experiencing this dystopia and feeling what it feels like to be in war. Like what if there's actually a world war, and how it feels to be a refugee, like to have no home, to leave your house, and all the existential risk that can happen in our lives. And I think I didn't take it seriously enough until I could feel in my body what that feels like the chaos that can emerge. And I don't know why there were fires everywhere, and we didn't know who we could trust, and we were just running, and we were trying, not even knowing where to go, but just homeless. And that was such an intense experience to wake up into that and feel that in my body. And then from that intensity to feel also the other side, like we are really evolutionary mystics responding to that. And as Marc says in the Dharma, the world is full of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. So that, and that relates back to the question of our sacred autobiography, is that for me, the word power and empowerment is really important. So to know that we have the powers of the gods and that we can enact this new story and that we can respond to make sure that we do not go to dystopia, but we actually create a utopia, a world more beautiful that we can ever imagine. So to claim that power and to know that power in my body, and also to know that it doesn't even have to be something crazy, wild and big and beautiful, which is actually what we are creating here. But that is so simple. And I loved, that's the final thing I'll say about it, is I loved how Zach said it today in the board meeting, is that it actually only takes a whispering to impact the entire field. And so all we have to do is whisper in each other's ear and say, hey, you're beautiful, you are valuable. Or just one person, meeting one person in the street and really making eye contact with them and really connecting with them. Or like in my personal life, I'm moving to closer to live with my family, so also with my nephew and my nieces. So I'm really looking forward to that, also to kind of bring this presence and value and love into their lives and helping them get off their phone a little bit more and really generate that connection.
Wow. Amen. Beautiful. What a dream too to have. And one of the things that, and I want to ask Christina the same question, one of the things that I want to highlight from what you said is that, we did spend a whole day talking about existential risk and all of the validated possible threats to humanity, and AI being one of the big ones. And this is grounded in lots of evidence, right? And the thing about it is that when I was listening to it, I didn't feel more depressed and like resigned, as you're saying. Like I actually felt called, like, oh my, this is big, and I'm here to make a global impact. And the urgency and the significance of what we're doing, it actually activated me, because that's how evolution works, right? When there's need, and then we have a capacity to meet that need, we actually are lured to it, we're drawn to it, we're woken up by it, right? And so you beautifully showed how we actually held both the kind of the grim darkness of it, but also the beauty and light and the potential and possibility. So beautiful. Christina, what would you like to share about how this experience here relates to your own personal story and your personal journey?
I'm kind of blown away with the love that I'm swimming in, that both of these guys have talked about so beautifully. And so being an activist, and one of the things that Zach said that I love so much is that I have this quote, but now I can't find it, is that we are among a group of people that are creating peace that does not rely on an enemy. And it just keeps reverberating in my head, and it makes even more real why it matters so much that we are taking the time and the money and all the various resources that we put into every year after year, with this being the 15th annual board meeting for the Center for World Philosophy and Religion, that we come here from all over the world, and we spend a long weekend together, and we pray together, and we sing together, and we vision together, and we listen to each other's sacred autobiographies. And so I find that I just feel more and more at home in my own life, in my own body, in my soul, in God. So much more God to come, as Dr. Marc Gafni will often say. And it's true. They're like we are experiencing all of that directly. There's so much more God to come, and we are creating a peace that does not rely on an enemy. So much more to say, but go ahead with your next question.
Yeah. Well, I'm also wanting to kind of double click on that, because he did, Zach did share that in a way that was just like so profound, right? Because we're actually providing a vision for what's possible that can really unite the world. And that's why we often say this is about promote or creating or articulating a global ethos for a global civilization, right? And it's actually wow, it's something that can really bring us together. Mm-hmm. So we're experiencing it. Now you already, yeah.
What about you? What is it like for you?
Oh yeah, well, I think for many years I've been longing to contribute to something globally. I did international development for 5 years, thinking that was what my highest gift could be given. I lived in Nigeria and Peru, and I thought, working out how to work on community development in terms of, empowerment of the local people and conservation and adaptation to climate change. I thought that was the way I could make an impact. But this is actually, and every time I went to another option for my greatest impact, I found it falling short. Like there was something more, like it was limited, like it actually didn't go to the deepest source code of culture, and it didn't make a great impact. And I feel like what we're doing here is like an acupuncture point to make the whole system, including the international development community in that world, right? And all organizations, actually to create better organizations that are promoting more unique self-emergence of people, right? So this is the superstructure, as Daniel Schmachtenberger often shares, and Dr. Mark shares, and Zach shares. And maybe this is getting into the second question, is like the superstructure is something that actually trickles to every single thing that we are and do. And so it's drenched in meaning. And I've been, yearning for significant contribution. And this is what draws me here. And to be honest, though, I'm allured here by the people and the kind of community this is too. Yeah. It's a dynamic, multifaceted kind of community. So on that note, the second question I want to ask and invite is something about what dharmic nuggets have you all taken from this? There was a lot of Dharma, a lot of the Dharma which was spoken is recorded, so that because it emerges through the conversation, right? Some of it's never been spoken before, some of it has, and it was clarified through these conversations. So what was one or two pieces of the Dharma that has resonated with you all?
You want to go first?
Well, so much, but so we talk about story a lot, and we talk about the importance of story and how we want to bring forward the deepest kind of structures of reality into this new story, which isn't a new story, but it is the oldest of the stories. And so we went deep into how stories are a structure of the cosmos, all the way up and all the way down. And for instance, we talked about how bees wiggle their butts to tell each other the story of where the pollen is, so that they can make their honey. And so how story is being taken away from us ever more, and that is part of the death of our humanity. So this inspiration to have CosmoErotic Humanism alive in our conversations is ever deeper in me from this weekend. So what about you, Krista?
Yeah, participating in the story of Cosmos. And then I really loved yesterday, we had a whole day kind of reading sacred text. And as many of you probably know, Dr. Marc Gafni is not only an amazing teacher, he's also an amazing rabbi. So he was just reading the sacred text of Genesis and kind of retelling that story in a way that it just completely blew me open and opened up kind of the codes of what we're calling the new human. And so to experience that for me was like a re-alivening of these sacred texts and feeling the kind of mystical transmission that is in the Bible, that is in those texts, but then in a way that you can feel that it is transmitted from master to master to master in a way that it's not even the public story, but kind of the hidden story. And I know that Marc Gafni, as a rabbi, has spent hours and hours and hours studying and reading and comparing these texts. And the way he talks about that, I imagine him sitting in a room, or that's how he tells the story also, like with books everywhere, just going crazy for hours, not eating or whatever, just staying in until the secret codes almost of the sacred text kind of reveals herself. And so feeling this immense gratitude to be able to study with such a great rabbi, but also feeling the gratitude of the transmission that has been given from master to master to master, and now to us here, but also to us here, to all of us, like everyone coming here to One Mountain is receiving that, the wisdom of Solomon. And so the one of the pieces, the story that was told is, you kind of need the whole thing, but kind of the conclusion is the birth of Judah, which is the birth of Homo More, which is the birth of the new human, the birth of the new possibility, the birth of the possibility of transformation. So where there was wounding, we can heal, and where there was darkness, we can bring light. So this birthing of the new human, and then receiving that in a way that it is about my personal story, as you said, my sacred autobiography, and it is about the collective as a whole. So all of us participating in the evolution of love, participating in birthing this new story in that moment, and then feeling how our participation and our attention and our willingness to transform as an individual also participates in birthing that new possibility for the whole. So for me, that was like a deep mystical experience, but also not mystical, like it's out there, it's far away, but it's actually very, very real here in the space between us.
Yeah, gorgeous. Yeah. And that practice that we did, it's like beyond words, because this retreat is truly, there's an intellectual part of it where a lot of Dharma is shared and a lot of the details of meta crisis. And then there's a very mystical part of it. And we're deeply engaged in practice. And I have a question that maybe I'll ask now, and I'll come back to my Dharma thing. Next question. After that, the last question I want to ask is what is it like to be in a unique self symphony? That's one of the big teachings in this community, is that unique self is first principle and first value of Cosmos, uniqueness, the evolution toward more and more uniqueness, and the waking up of each of us beyond the restrictions of our egoic consciousness and realizing that we're connected to the field of value. And then from that connection to the field of value, re-inhabiting our life and living fully as our embodied human experience, but now this time not from the ego, but from unique self, right? And so living that, but in the collective, when unique selves come together, we call it a unique self symphony, because there's a synergy and there's a musical score that is holding all of it, while each instrument plays their unique instrument in each note. And so what's it like to be in this unique self symphony? Maybe you can start with your experience last night. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. So as I'm going into talking about what that's like, I want to bring forward another piece of the Dharma, which is the way that the culture, especially through social media, is stealing people's joint attentional capacity, meaning our ability to pay attention to what's important and what are the, what's important. And so yesterday I had a very profound experience of not only being in joint attention with the whole board and paying attention to what was being spoken and what Krista just talked about our rabbi going into Genesis deeply. But what had happened was that it was pouring rain yesterday and it was so cold, and we were supposed to eat outside last night, and we were going to do a particular menu. We had all these plans carefully laid out for the last months. And we decided at breakfast that we were going to change all of that and that we were going to have a whole new menu. And we have 35 people that we're preparing for, right? That we're going to have a whole new menu, and that we're going to go to the Airbnb where some of us are staying, which is such a wonderful place on Curtis Vance Road here in Danville, Vermont. But anyway, so we made that decision, and it kind of created a lot of disruption. Like, I didn't really ask David properly what he thought about that and would he help. And then I had to leave for a little while to go to the grocery store. But what ended up happening in the whole process, at least for me, is I was on Zoom listening to the teachings, and I started having signs that are very common to me from the cosmos externally as I was moving through the world. And so I was getting all of this coherence from the teaching into my direct experience in the external reality. And it was just blowing me open. And then in the end, you have to know that so we got chickens, and we got the best green beans in the world, and we had salad and all this stuff, and salmon, and anyways, it was we went to the Airbnb an hour and a half before the 35 people were all going to be there, and all of us together just made this most amazing meal happen so quickly, and just that living field of joint attention where we could work all together. And then the celebration was just astounding. Between Dr. Marc Gafni shared a personal story that moved us all and encouraged us to really share our sacred autobiographies with each other. And there was singing. Krista so beautifully on her guitar played for us We Are the People, and we were all singing it, and on and on. So that's a little taste of it. And who wants to say
well,
next?
maybe I'll just add a little bit to it, and then we'll come to prayer, unless you have something else you want to add.
I do.
But about last night is like, I think a litmus test for a true unique self symphony is that there's a free flowing of need and contribution. Like there's no split between I need something and I'm going to help you do it, right? It's like, Dorothea just jumped in and started cutting vegetables, or Brett Thomas, he went and just sort of made all the tables and put all the forks and knives out, and Mariah was making the salad with Ken, and just like boom, 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 and afterwards, like without even a split second, people jumped in. Jeffrey started cleaning up the dishes, and Benjamin helped him, and Yvonne helped. So it was just like huge, just flow of unique self activation in that moment, and there was so much joy. And so, and it was facilitated by our conductor, Christina, who kind of led the whole effort. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing to witness, and I got to be on the receiving end of it and just see all of that emerge. And maybe I'll just share my experience of the distinction between autonomy and communion, and to kind of be in this field, in this almost beehive, buzzing and resonating with each other and feeling, attuning to each other. Oh, what is needed? It's literally like making music together, but it's like this paradox of, in order to fully emerge as our unique self, we need to be willing to surrender to the whole. And that willingness to surrender is kind of like almost giving up my power to receive a power that is so much deeper. And then in receiving that deeper power, actually a whole new level of our unique self emerges. And so in my journey, I really had to let go of the things I thought my unique self would be, and being kind of stripped from all of that and just say, okay, I'm just going to do whatever is needed. And then in that, my unique self emerged so much more powerful than ever before. So kind of letting go of that fear of communion and trusting that autonomy will always emerge in that. And especially in a space like this, where there is so much safety and calling each other into our greatness. Like we wouldn't allow for ourselves to disappear into fusion, but we're always calling our uniqueness and the fullness of our power. And this dinner was just such a crazy example. We should kind of dissect it more and see like what are the things that actually worked in that. Why did it feel so good? Why did it happen so beautifully? So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. Thank you. So that was a little taste of each of our unique perspectives on this 2024 Forward Retreat. And so, as we always do, it's about talking about something, it's about embodying it, it's about practicing it. And this One Mountain is really based on the recognition of value